Welcome to Psychology of Humans. Today we're exploring one of the most influential and controversial figures in the entire history of psychology, Sigmund Freud. Regardless of whether people agree with him, disagree with him, or critique him, one thing is undeniable. Freud permanently changed the way we think about the mind. Before Freud, psychology looked only at conscious thought. After Freud, the world began to understand that there is an entire hidden layer beneath awareness, the unconscious, that influences every decision, every reaction, and every relationship you have. Freud didn't just introduce new ideas, he reshaped Western culture's understanding of human behavior, motivation, and emotion. His work became the foundation of modern psychotherapy, and even today, decades after his death, his concepts continue to appear in everyday language. Defense mechanisms, repression, slips of the tongue, the ID, the ego, the superego, these are all Freudian ideas. In this video, I'm going to break down Freud's core concepts in a way that's practical, clear, and useful. My goal isn't to give a history lesson, it's to help you understand how Freud's ideas show up in your life today, and how becoming aware of the unconscious mind can transform your emotional awareness, your relationships, and your ability to make sense of your internal world. Let's start with Freud's central idea, that most of your mental life happens outside of your awareness. He believed the human mind is like an iceberg. The part sticking out of the water is your conscious mind, but the much larger part underneath the surface is the unconscious. You're aware of your thoughts, intentions, and decisions, but you're not aware of the deeper motivations, fears, beliefs, and desires driving them. Freud argued that your behavior is rarely accidental. Instead, it reflects a complex interaction of unconscious forces shaped by childhood experiences and emotional conflicts. Freud believed the unconscious forms as a result of repression. Repression happens when you experience thoughts or feelings that are too painful, too threatening, or too unacceptable to face directly. Instead of dealing with them, your mind pushes them out of awareness. But out of sight doesn't mean gone. Repressed thoughts don't disappear. They influence your habits, emotional reactions, phobias, dreams, and even physical symptoms. Freud saw repression as the cornerstone of the unconscious mind. He often said that the things we refuse to face internally eventually show up externally. You might feel anxious without knowing why. You might avoid certain situations without understanding the deeper fear behind them. You might sabotage opportunities because of unconscious beliefs about your worth. Freud believed most forms of psychological suffering come from this internal conflict between unconscious impulses and conscious resistance. One of Freud's most famous contributions is the structural model of the mind, the ID, the ego, and the superego. These aren't physical parts of the brain. They're psychological forces that represent different aspects of your personality. The ID is the primal, instinctive part of you, the part that seeks pleasure, comfort, and immediate gratification. It doesn't care about logic, morality, or long-term consequences. It just says, I want this now. Freud believed the ID operates entirely in the unconscious. The superego is the opposite. It represents internalized rules, values, morality, and social expectations. It's the voice of your parents, your culture, and your upbringing, the part of you that judges, corrects, and demands perfection. The superego can be supportive, but it can also be harsh, critical, and guilt-inducing. Between those two forces sits the ego, the conscious, rational part of you that tries to balance the ID's desires and the superego's demands. The ego's job is to navigate reality, to make decisions that satisfy your needs without violating your values or the rules of society. When the ID and superego clash, the ego experiences anxiety, and that's when defense mechanisms come into play. Defense mechanisms are one of Freud's most lasting contributions. These are unconscious strategies the ego uses to reduce anxiety and protect you from psychological discomfort. The problem is, defense mechanisms distort reality. They help you cope, but they also prevent you from facing the truth. Let's look at a few of the most important ones. Repression, as mentioned earlier, pushes painful thoughts out of awareness. Denial refuses to accept reality even when the evidence is obvious. Projection attributes your own unwanted qualities or feelings to someone else, like accusing others of being angry when you're the one feeling it. Rationalization creates logical excuses to justify behavior that really comes from emotional motives. Displacement redirects difficult emotions onto a safer target, like getting angry at someone small because you can't express anger toward someone powerful. These are not signs of weakness. Freud believed defense mechanisms are part of being human. They protect your psyche, but if you rely on them too much, they keep you stuck, repeating the same emotional patterns without understanding why. One of Freud's most revolutionary insights was that the unconscious communicates through symbolic language. He believed dreams were the royal road to the unconscious because they reveal hidden wishes and unresolved conflicts disguised in symbolic form. You might dream about being chased, falling, losing something valuable, or forgetting something important. Freud believed these dreams reflect deeper anxieties, desires, and memories that your conscious mind is unable or unwilling to confront. Freud also believed slips of the tongue, Those moments when you say something you didn't mean were not accidents. He argued that these slips reveal unconscious thoughts breaking through the surface. You might accidentally call someone by the wrong name or say something inappropriate at the wrong time. Freud saw these moments as windows into the unconscious. One of the most influential and controversial aspects of Freud's work is his emphasis on childhood experiences. Freud believed that early relationships, especially with parents, shape your personality, your emotional world, and your future relationships. He argued that unresolved childhood conflicts continue into adulthood and often reappear in disguised forms. For example, if you grew up seeking approval from a parent who was emotionally distant, you may find yourself seeking validation in your adult relationships. If you grew up with unpredictable caretakers, you may struggle with trust or develop anxious attachment patterns. Freud wasn't saying that people are doomed by their childhoods. Instead, he believed that by understanding the patterns formed in childhood, you gain the freedom to change them. Awareness leads to insight, and insight leads to transformation. Freud's therapeutic approach, psychoanalysis, was built on this idea. The goal wasn't to give advice, but to help people uncover the unconscious forces shaping their behavior. Freud believed that talking freely, without censorship, allows repressed material to rise to the surface. Through this process, people gain self-awareness, resolve internal conflicts, and reduce psychological suffering. Freud's method relied on interpretation, especially of dreams, memories, slips, fears, and recurring patterns. The goal was always the same: to bring unconscious content into consciousness, because once you can see your inner conflicts, you can work through them. Even though many of Freud's ideas have evolved over time, the core insight remains incredibly powerful. You are influenced by more than you realize. Much of what you feel, fear, desire, and repeat comes from deeper layers of the mind. So how do these ideas apply to your life today? First, understanding your defense mechanisms can be life-changing. Whenever you catch yourself justifying something, avoiding something, or criticizing others, pause. Ask yourself, what emotion am I trying not to feel right now? That question alone can uncover unconscious fears and motivations. Second, pay attention to repeated life patterns. If you keep experiencing the same relationship problems, the same emotional triggers, or the same frustrations, Freud would say that something unconscious is trying to surface. The repetition isn't a coincidence, it's a message. Third, observe your dreams. You don't need to interpret them perfectly. Just notice the themes, emotions, and symbols that appear repeatedly. Dreams reveal what your conscious mind hasn't fully processed. Fourth, notice your emotional reactions. Freud believed that no reaction is random. If something hits you harder than expected, irritation, jealousy, fear, guilt, something deeper is at play. Your unconscious is trying to communicate through emotion. And finally, don't underestimate the power of self-exploration. You don't need a therapist to begin understanding your unconscious, though therapy can help. You can start by journaling, reflecting, and observing your internal world with honesty. The more you bring awareness to your patterns, the more free you become. Freud's work is not about blaming yourself or your past. It's about understanding your mind so you can take control of your life. The unconscious may influence you, but it doesn't have to control you. When you bring awareness to your inner conflicts, you gain the clarity and strength to make different choices. Whether or not you agree with all of Freud's theories, his core message remains timeless. Self-awareness is the path to freedom. When you learn to see the forces shaping your thoughts and behaviors, you become the author of your story rather than a passenger in it. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe.